Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're tackling something I think affects almost everyone at some point, loneliness.
Absolutely. We've got this material, loneliness as a pandemic, health risks of disconnection, and it really makes the case that this is, well, more than just a feeling.
Right. It paints it as a serious public health issue with, real consequences.
Yeah, the source seems to be from a show, Human Connection, hosted by Adam and Nora, and they argue pretty strongly that chronic loneliness, it's got deep roots and really impacts our overall health.
So our mission today is to really unpack that. What is loneliness according to this material? How does it actually affect our bodies and minds?
And maybe most importantly, what can we do about it based on what they suggest?
Exactly. And just to kick things off, they throw out this really striking comparison.
Oh, yeah.
They say chronic loneliness can be as damaging to your health, like physically and mentally, as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow. Okay. That certainly gets your attention.
It really does. So
Mm,
that tells you right away, this isn't just, feeling a bit down sometimes.
yeah. Not at all. So let's get into how this human connection transcript defines it. It's not simply being by yourself, is it?
No, exactly. They make that really clear. Being alone and feeling lonely are different. It's all
Yeah.
about your perception,
Right.
whether you feel disconnected.
Right. You could be surrounded by people at a party, say, and still feel completely isolated if you don't feel genuinely connected.
Hmm.
And that feeling, that perceived lack of connection, it apparently sets off the body's stress response system again and again.
Okay, so it's not just in your head, it's physiological.
Very much so. The source talks about how it impacts the nervous system. You get increased cortisol, that stress hormone,
Mhm.
more inflammation, and even a suppressed immune system. So you're literally more vulnerable to getting sick.
That's fascinating. And something else that really jumped out from the material
What's that?
was the mention of Gen Z. Apparently, they're reporting some of the highest levels of loneliness.
Yeah, I saw that too. It feels a bit counterintuitive, right? Because they
Yeah,
seem so hyper-connected online.
totally. Makes you wonder about the quality of those connections, doesn't it?
It really does. Maybe, scrolling through social media just doesn't replace that deeper sense of belonging we need. Volume isn't the same as depth.
Which brings us to the health impacts. The transcript goes into more detail there. Physical stuff
Yeah, things like higher blood pressure, that weaker immune response we mentioned, and even potential impacts on cognitive function over time.
and the mental health side. That's probably more what people associate with loneliness.
For sure. They draw strong links to anxiety, depression, and unfortunately, even increased risk of suicidal thoughts.
That's really serious.
It is. And there's this idea that long-term disconnection can actually start to, rewire the brain.
Rewire it. How?
Well, almost training it to expect rejection or social threats. So you become hypervigilant, maybe misinterpret neutral cues as negative.
Oh, wow. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost,
Kind of, yeah. You anticipate rejection, maybe you withdraw or seem defensive.
which then pushes people away, reinforcing the loneliness. Oof.
Exactly. It's a tough cycle. And the source material definitely tackles the role of technology in this.
Right. The social media paradox.
Uh,
It promises connection, but sometimes delivers the opposite.
mm. And Adam and Nora, the hosts in the transcript, they put it really bluntly, likes are not the same as love.
That cuts right through it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those little dopamine hits from notifications, they just don't substitute for real, genuine connection.
Not even close. So, okay, it paints a pretty stark picture. But does the source offer any hope? Any, practical advice?
Yes, thankfully,
Yeah.
it's not all doom and gloom. They offer some really concrete, actionable steps,
Yeah.
and they emphasize starting small.
Okay, like what?
Things like making real eye contact with people you interact with daily,
Mm.
having a brief actual conversation with the checkout person or your neighbor, small moments of genuine interaction.
Right, not just transactional exchanges,
Okay.
actually seeing the other person.
Exactly. And vulnerability comes up too,
That's-
suggesting that being willing to actually name the feeling, to admit I'm feeling lonely, can be a powerful step. It breaks the silence and acknowledges a real need.
Yeah, that makes sense. Takes away some of its power, maybe. And reminds you others probably feel it too.
And then, more actively, they suggest joining things,
Hmm.
groups, classes, communities,
Finding your tribe, so to speak.
pretty much, with an emphasis on in-person interaction, if that's possible for you.
And volunteering gets a specific mention, right?
It does, because it offers both that face-to-face connection and a sense of purpose, which can be really powerful against feeling isolated.
That double benefit makes sense.
And of course, they mention therapy as a key resource, especially if loneliness has tipped into depression or serious anxiety.
Absolutely. Getting professional support is crucial then.
One thing I found really helpful was how they reframe loneliness.
Ah.
They present it not as like a character flaw or
Hmm.
weakness, but as a basic human signal, like hunger telling you you need food or thirst telling you you need water.
Mm.
Loneliness tells you you need connection.
That's a really good way to put it. It destigmatizes it. It's just your brain and body saying, hey, we need this essential thing.
Exactly. And just like ignoring hunger has consequences, ignoring that signal for connection damages your health, your sleep, your mood.
Which loops back to all those physical and mental health risks we talked about earlier.
Precisely. So, as we sort of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
a really important takeaway from this material, I think, is for anyone listening who is feeling lonely right now.
What's that?
Just know you're not alone in feeling that way. Seriously. And even just listening to this, trying to understand it, that's a form of reaching out in itself.
That's a great point. And building on that, the transcript has a kind of call to action, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Instead of just defaulting to more scrolling.
Which is so easy to do.
So easy. They suggest prioritizing a real human moment. Maybe, actually call a friend instead of just texting. Have a
Yeah.
proper conversation.
Hear their voice, have that back and forth. It makes a difference. And not just for you, but likely for them too. You never know who else needs that connection.
Absolutely. So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is to just consider how can you cultivate more of those real moments? What's one small thing, maybe even today, you could do to strengthen that feeling of connection?
Definitely something to think about.